Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how Ashley and I ended up on a tiny plane with some of these familiar faces. And honestly, at the time, we couldn't tell you. We were headed somewhere we weren't supposed to talk about, to see something we definitely weren't allowed to show you, and to learn about new hearing aid technology that, at the time, almost nobody outside of a handful of people even knew existed. In fact, I was about to become the first audiologist outside of the company to ever even hear about it. But to explain how we ended up here, we needed to go back a few days. Remember that trip we took to Copenhagen to visit Widex headquarters? Well, we didn't go home after that trip. Nope. Instead, we hopped on a plane and left Denmark to a destination we had deliberately kept secret. That destination? Erlangen, Germany, home to one of WSA's major research and development facilities. And the reason they brought us here was because the hearing aid brand Signia had been working on something big. So they invited us behind the scenes to see technology that I couldn't even tell my mother about. Until now. Sorry, Mom. Now, our timing for this trip was actually pretty funny, because apparently we managed to arrive when pretty much the entire country of Germany was on holiday. The place was quiet. Real quiet. But despite that, the Signia team came in for the sole purpose of spending an entire day with us. And they had a lot to show us. We were going to learn about their history, what makes them tick, what challenges they're trying to overcome. We were going to get a tour of their research facility and experience their labs firsthand. And eventually, get our first look at the reason we'd secretly traveled to Germany in the first place. But before we could see the new tech, we had to understand how they got here. We started with a deep dive into the history of Signia and hearing aid development. And one of the things that really becomes obvious when you visit a facility like this is just how much goes into creating a modern hearing aid. We often tend to focus on just the finished product. What does it look like? How does it sound? How well does it perform in background noise? But behind these tiny little devices are years of research into acoustics, psychoacoustics, wireless connectivity, signal processing, microphones, artificial intelligence, and how the human auditory system interacts with all of it. And in Erlangen, I got to see a lot of that research firsthand. They took us through the research facility and into several of their testing labs. And they've got some crazy labs.
So now we are in a church, yeah?
Whoa, dude, that's crazy.
Also for you.
Ultimately, these labs allow their researchers to create highly controlled environments and test exactly how hearing aids respond to different situations. Different types of noise, different directions of speech, different acoustic environments, different wireless signals, and apparently, wind, which gave me the perfect opportunity to make an important contribution to hearing aid research. My best Michael Jackson impression. You got this? Yeah. I'm not entirely sure this was part of their original testing protocol, but I think we can all agree that science advanced that day. We also got a behind-the-scenes look at something that doesn't get nearly as much attention as the sound processing itself. Bluetooth. Because hearing aids aren't just hearing aids anymore. They're connecting to smartphones, streaming phone calls, music and media, communicating with apps, and now interacting with completely new wireless audio technologies. So we got to see how Signia actually researches and tests Bluetooth performance and connectivity inside of their labs. And this turned out to be particularly relevant to what they were about to show us. Because after spending the first part of the day learning how all of this technology gets developed, it was finally time. The reason we had secretly flown to Germany, the hearing aid that Signia had been working on behind closed doors. Meet the new Signia MaX. MAX stands for Multi-Adaptive Experience, and Signia is calling this the world's first multidimensional AI hearing aid platform powered by not one, not two, not three, but 4 deep neural networks. And that last part is really important. We've already seen artificial intelligence make its way into hearing aids, but much of the AI being used in hearing aids has traditionally been focused primarily on one thing: noise reduction. And Signia believes that that's a problem, because real life isn't just speech plus noise. Think about sitting at a table at a busy restaurant. You might have 3 or 4 people talking, someone sitting beside you, someone across the table, there's music playing, there's dishes clanking, people talking behind you, you're moving your head, they're moving, and you're also talking. A hearing aid has to somehow make sense of all that in real time. And that's the idea behind what Signia calls acoustic intelligence. Instead of relying on a deep neural network for just one task, MaX uses 4 task-specific deep neural networks that work together. One for speech direction, one for own voice detection, one for scene analysis, and one for noise processing. And here's the interesting part. Those 4 systems aren't just operating independently. They're continuously sharing information with each other so the hearing aids can build a more complete understanding of the entire listening environment. We actually got to see visual demonstrations of this technology in action, which made the concept much easier to understand. The 4 deep neural networks power 4 major features inside of MaX. Real-time Conversation Enhancement AI locates and enhances multiple conversation partners during dynamic group conversations, and Signia says it's now processing 75% more data points per second compared to Signia iX. Own voice processing AI recognizes when you're speaking. Ambient scene adaptation AI continuously analyzes characteristics of the environment rather than simply classifying it and dropping you into a predetermined listening program. And dynamic noise control AI tries to understand what the noise actually is, where it's coming from, and whether you're currently in a conversation before determining how aggressively that noise should be reduced. Of course, running 4 deep neural networks continuously requires some serious processing power, so Signia developed an entirely new chip for MaX. According to Signia, the MaX chip delivers 54 times more processing power than Signia iX, 50% greater energy efficiency, and twice the memory. And that's what allows this acoustic intelligence system to remain active throughout the entire day. But you guys know how I feel about specifications. They don't mean much if they don't translate into better performance. And this is where Signia showed us some of the research behind MaX. According to research cited by Signia, 97% of wearers perform better with MaX in noisy group conversations compared to key competitors. Signia also reports that MaX ranks #1 in signal-to-noise ratio performance in group conversation and noise. Now, those are Signia's own cited studies, so naturally I'm going to want to dig deeper into that research and independently evaluate these hearing aids myself. But if those results translate into real-world performance, that's significant, because dynamic group conversations and background noise remain one of the hardest listening situations for hearing aids to handle. The first hearing aid built on this new platform is the Signia Pure CNG MaX. It's a rechargeable receiver and canal hearing aid, but there's one other major piece of technology here that we got a glimpse of earlier in the day: connectivity. Signia calls their new approach One Connect technology. The Pure CNG MaX supports Bluetooth Classic, Bluetooth LE Audio, Telecoil, and Auracast. So rather than having connectivity dictate which version of hearing aid someone needs, Signia's goal is to have one platform capable of handling essentially all of it. Of course, they can fly us all the way to Germany, they can show us the research, they can give us the PowerPoint presentations, they can show us all the fancy visualizations, but eventually, I need to hear it. And that's exactly what they did. They put me through a demonstration where I could actually experience what MaX was doing inside of a complex listening environment. And yeah, it was impressive. What stood out to me wasn't simply that the background noise became quieter, it was the way the system was able to maintain access to the conversation while the environment around me was changing. And that's an important distinction, because the goal of a great hearing aid shouldn't be to just make the world quiet. It should be to give you better access to the sounds that you actually want to hear while still keeping you connected with what's happening around you. After getting to experience it, we went even deeper. We got into the fitting software to see how hearing care professionals will actually program and manipulate these hearing aids. This is the part that you, as a hearing aid wearer, rarely get to see. But it's also incredibly important, because you can have the most advanced hearing aid technology in the world, but it still needs to be appropriately selected, programmed, verified, and optimized for the individual wearing it. So we got to see how these new MaX features integrate into the fitting process and what hearing care professionals will actually be able to control inside of the software. And after spending an entire day learning all about these hearing aids, I figured they probably wouldn't notice if a pair accidentally went missing and somehow ended up in Arizona. Just kidding. This entire experience gave me a completely different perspective on what goes into developing hearing aid technology, and it gave me a much better understanding of what Signia is trying to accomplish with MaX. Hearing aids have gotten extremely good in controlled situations. The much bigger challenge is getting them to understand the messy, constantly changing listening environments where we actually live our lives. Multiple people talking, noise coming from different directions, changing environments, and the hearing aid wearer becoming a part of the conversation themselves. Signia believes the next step is having multiple AI systems working together to understand all of these things simultaneously. And the Max is doing just that. So now you know where that tiny airplane was taking us. You know why we suddenly disappeared after Copenhagen. And now you finally know what we were not allowed to tell you: Signia MaX. The secret isn't a secret anymore. But this trip was only our first look, because now it's time to get these hearing aids back to Arizona, get them in my clinic, program them, verify them, wear them, test them myself, and most importantly, find out if all of this technology actually delivers where it matters, in the real world. So stay tuned, because with Signia MaX, I'm just getting started.